right, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Today is the launch of Yellowfin 9.15 and our discussion about one of our very exciting new features, artificial intelligence-driven natural language queries. So we'll focus on that. We'll talk about the entire release, but obviously we're very excited about this new feature. It is a banner feature for what we're putting out this year, and really creates and enables a lot of much more exciting insight discovery that we'll be happy to demonstrate for you today. If I could just have everybody, as this goes on, feel free, if you have questions throughout the webinar, to just go ahead and type those questions into the questions panel, and we will have time for Q&A towards the end where I'll get to them. And I'm joined today by Dan Cardno, our illustrious solutions architect, as well as Stephen Ball. Hi, everybody. There you go, Stephen Ball, our pre-sales director. And we'll go ahead and get started. So, just a little UR here roadmap for us and what we've been doing with Yellowfin in recent times. Obviously, the acquisition in 2022 was a big transition for the business, and we've continued to release these new and exciting features, some of which more recently have really been geared around artificial intelligence, enhancing some of the capabilities of natural language queries, celebrating, of course, our 20th anniversary, making reports and insights easier to get to. And we have this phrase about getting to the why faster, know why things change. And at Yellowfin, one of the key things we've really bound ourselves to as a philosophy is that we're not just trying to create pretty charts. The idea here really is to get your team, or if you're embedding Yellowfin, your customers, to the insights they need faster, and to find methods for doing that. That is the overall theme of really what we've been working on the past few years. And we're going to be talking about the features we're releasing in the 9.15 launch very much as a part of that theme. For us, we sat down at one point years ago and decided that, while everybody is out there kind of saying dashboards are dead, and I think that may carry some truth, but we don't really quite align with that. We think dashboards are a tool that can be used to garner insights, but we also think that there are a lot of other ways to do it. For us, seeing BI as about dashboards is like seeing biology as being about microscopes. If you treat the dashboard as though that's ultimately what you're trying to accomplish, you miss the point of business intelligence. You miss the story that the numbers are trying to tell. And what we want to do with Yellowfin is create a platform that makes that easier to get to. And that means finding all sorts of different modalities that you can create that content in, so that it's not only easier to find the why, find those insights, find what numbers are driving change in your organization, but also have a lot of different ways to collaborate on that, whether it's a dashboard or using something like Yellowfin Present, Stories, which is a unique feature to Yellowfin, or, as I'm going to show you today, using an easier, more natural way to ask Yellowfin questions to get to those insights. So let's just talk a little bit about recent releases and recap what we've done over the past year for a little bit. So obviously, as part of that getting to insights faster, one of the things we really have to accomplish is getting reports to be easier to create, getting more intuitive design in there, reducing the number of clicks as much as possible. We put out a big release about a year ago recently that really was largely centered around just reducing the number of actions you have to take as a user, or your customers have to take, in order to get to the reports they're really trying to style and create. So we've made modernized menu systems, we've reduced the number of actions you have to take to do basic things you're trying to do, improve the report builder or chart builder experiences, and so on. In addition to that, you saw us start dabbling in AI in ways that are very pragmatic and very useful, we hope, in our new chatbots that allow for a couple of things. One is that you can now go to those chatbots, and with every release, we're updating this documentation and going through and doing another turn on the chatbot training, so that you can ask it questions about how to use Yellowfin, or if you get stuck on something, what do you do and where do you go? And that natural language chatbot will come back with an answer summarizing the documentation and even giving you pointers on where to go. We've also got a separate chatbot that does code generation specifically for those Yellowfin integrations that are sometimes pretty tricky and technical. So as you want to do, say, embedding Yellowfin into your application and you want to do something quite sophisticated, like putting the report in there, making it contained by your own styling, and then layer all of that into our single sign-on integration interface, then you can actually go and ask this chatbot how to do that, and it will provide you in a number of different programming languages the exact code you need to accomplish those things. So that's us kind of dabbling into AI to try to find ways that are really pragmatically useful. It's been very important for us not to just join in the AI hype and to just release features that are features that allow us to put the AI banner out there, but to really find things that align with our philosophy of making things simpler, making actions simpler for our customers. And if you're embedding Yellowfin, making those actions simpler for your customers, or simpler for you to get in front of your customers with that content. And so this was a big release for us in doing that. And what we're going to be showing you today is yet another extension down that path. We've also really focused on some of the capabilities for ISVs, expanding out that REST API. And I'll tell you, we can get into the details here about, the specific endpoints that are available. If you are an ISV and you're doing more and more of these technical integrations, you should know we'll be supporting you strategically more and more as future releases come out. We've gotten to the point now where in our development teams, they are starting to show me screens that are the next generation of Yellowfin that were developed entirely on the REST API that you have access to. So that makes Yellowfin a much more capable platform in terms of switching out interfaces or doing custom things as an ISV to create more streamlined experiences with your products that you can put in front of your customers, and ideally create all sorts of not only market opportunity, but really push those analytics in front of your customers in a way that contextually makes sense in your product.
Chance.
So now yes.
We're just still seeing your start screen slide. I don't know if you're navigating through at all.
Oh, well, let's just go back through those really quick so everybody gets to see it. So I talked a little bit about the history here. Thanks, Stephen, for letting me know that. And then recap 2024, talked about design, and then the AI chatbots and the APIs. And this catches us up to where I was. So thanks for letting me know that, Stephen. Everything's good now, I take it?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. All right, so now now that we're actually sharing on the right slide, we'll talk about the very exciting piece for today, the new release of our AI-driven natural language queries. This is the first release of 2025, and it is a banner release for us. We have made it available for download as of April 24th this year, and let's get into it a little bit and what we're really talking about doing. Now, along that theme that I was discussing about trying to find ways to not only allow people to share those numbers better, but to find the actual numbers that matter, find the numbers that are driving the reasons for things changing in their organization. We are finding that being able to very quickly go in and ask these questions in any way that you want is key to that. And it addresses these challenges around, you've got data in here, you want maybe a period over period calculation where you're trying to identify how something looks benchmarked against another time period, or two different buckets of your data benchmarked against each other. In most BI tools, this is fairly complex analysis. We also want to enable for those use cases where you've got people sitting around collaborating on, do we do this or do we do that, finding ways to be more directionally correct in their decisions. And they need to very quickly ask questions about their data in those contexts. And BI tools traditionally don't really serve that use case very well, because the first thing you have to do is either go to an analyst and then have them start to create the reports that you need in anticipation of the collaboration and meeting you're about to have, or you need to figure out how to do it yourself on the spot, go into some complex report development system and put that together. We want to make this more ad hoc and faster to get to. So it's not just about saving the tedium, it's about the fact that that tedious need to go into complex, fully featured reports often is not what you need in those spur of the moment, you know, how much did we sell in Minnesota last year versus the year before? If you want to do something like that, you need something that's much more ad hoc, and then you need that to be a fully fledged report when it comes out, so that at the end you can put that in your collaborative engagements, your dashboards, your presentations, or stories. So introducing the Yellowfin AI, we've tried to make this much easier by using AI and allowing for these more directionally correct ad hoc decisions to be made on your questions in the moment. So you can go in and type what it is you're looking for and then get that answer back and make it a fully featured report so that you can then turn around and share it in those dashboards, stories, presentations, and all that. So getting into that in a little bit more detail, the release includes quite a bit more than just the AI piece, although that's most of what we're chatting about today. The AI NLQ is obviously the banner feature of this release. In addition to that, just like with the recent releases that I spoke about, we'll be adding more into some of the administration capabilities, making them more flexible, specifically around cores. You're seeing some expansion and you know how many origins you can have, usability upgrades. If you go in and look at some of the styling options, for example, the time slider can now be styled more specific to your application. We can do things around the API that we weren't able to do, publishing, I think, 3 to 5 new endpoints. So we're continuing to expand that out. And then also, you know, a lot of other enhancements and fixes. But then, as we promised when we released these, there's been another turn on the documentation and the retraining of the chatbot model. So you can also go in and ask those questions. So let's talk about the AI-enabled NLQ and what it looks like in Yellowfin before we go on to a full demonstration of it. So with this feature, you can now go into what was just a guided natural language query interface where you were, you know, kind of clicking through parameters to structure a question, and you can just type your question without any syntax constraints. You can type it even as a question, type a partial question, and what it'll do is use an AI connection that's external that I'll get into in a moment to restructure that question into how you could design a Yellowfin report with a recommended report for what exactly you're, how you might visualize it to get an answer to the question that you asked. This is completely multilingual, just like features in Yellowfin have been for over a decade now. And in addition to that, the resulting reports are fully functional Yellowfin reports. So dashboards, stories, presentations are all outputs that you can include those reports into so that they can be shared and collaborated on just like any other reports in Yellowfin. They are first-class citizens in that manner. We also have a suggested questions feature that allows us to set up on basically use the AI to go back and look at questions that are coming up as part of the you know, as part of what the AI suggests you might want to ask about your data. So it essentially shares fields, column names with the AI and says, you know, what might we anticipate people are going to be asking about here? And you get a pop-up window of those suggested questions back from the AI. And if you click on any of those, it'll automatically populate the natural language query bar with that question. So if you want to come into this and you want to start using it, but you're not quite in that point where, you know, you want to have necessarily a meeting collaborating around it, that's a great way to start without just looking at a blank tab, not knowing what to type. You can hit that suggested question and then click on any of those question links that came back from the AI and get started that way, so you can get a sense of how it can be used. So how do we get started with this? In the demo, we're mostly going to focus on the end user experience. So I do want to just have a bit here where we talk a little bit about how you set up and configure this and what state it's in today and where we're going with it. So specific to this, we went with a bring your own AI model. We find that simplifies the deployment and integration quite a bit because you can take the API key for the AI connection you want to create. And when you go into the admin screen in Yellowfin, there's now a new external connections configuration screen that you can open up. You can name it, you can select the model. Right now we're supporting OpenAI, and we support the models for GPT-4o and GPT Mini. And so for those two models that will be expanded on quite a bit, that's what we've tested so far and have really good experience with. At this moment, we are testing out with Azure API, Claude, Gemini. We've had a look at Anthropic. And so, we'll be adding to these models quite a bit that you can select and explore with, all the way down to, getting into custom LLMs later on in case there are ISVs out there who really want to keep it local on their network and use a much more custom experience for asking questions. Right now, we support OpenAI for this release, and then those will be expanded on in future releases fairly quickly. So you connect to your OpenAI account. You do have the sharing of the user's question and the metadata for the data that you select out of your view. So just like with guided NLQ, you will go into the view and you will select fields that you want to be included that people can ask about. Only those items are shared with the AI for this feature, so that it does not have to upload your database to the AI or upload your data tables to the AI. What it's really sharing is the metadata around that, so that you get the question and the metadata, and the AI comes back with the structure of the interrogation that Yellowfin understands, and Yellowfin parses that structure and then goes and uses that to query your data. So your data content doesn't actually have to leave Yellowfin in order to get this done, which we believe helps it from a security perspective quite a bit. And you can also restrict this by user roles. That's the typo, I should say roles. And so when you restrict this by user roles, you go into the typical role screen in the admin page, and then you'll scroll down and you will look at the permission for the permission for AI-driven natural language queries, and you can turn that on or off for specific groups or for specific user roles. And even specific users. So the granularity on-off capability is there in terms of being able to restrict or allow users to do this. And that also permits you as an ISV to create a model for this such that you are charging a premium for your customers, possibly to help fund any additional support costs that come up with it, as well as fund that AI interaction. So this just describes here on the lower left that external connections piece, but it's fairly easy to find if you just go to the admin screen and then scroll down. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dan Cardno, who's going to give us a little demonstration of this new feature. Let's see if I can start this up correctly. And then there it is. Okay. Here we go.
Thanks, Chance, and hi everyone. Yes, what I'm going to do is go through an introduction to the AI within NLQ, and give you some examples and illustrations on how it's used and utilized, and some nice little tips in there as well. But I'm going to start with a sort of introduction as to what happens in the back end. And the reason for taking this sort of seemingly abstract step is to sort of illustrate, really, in a long-winded way, that there's very little to be done to set up the platform, and it's very quick to get information back from the system. Because if you're using Yellowfin already, this particular screen will probably be familiar to you. This is the view, the semantic layer, if you will, and this is where all of the reports that we build are based from. This becomes a sort of fundamental basis, if you will, for any of the reports or sort of items, any of the artifacts that we create within Yellowfin. The reason I wanted to sort of start here and show what's sort of going on behind the curtains is really quite specific. It's to sort of talk a little bit about how we can sort of tailor the information that ultimately gets searched by the use of synonyms. So what we're looking at here are the sort of components that get interrogated when our assisted insights or the guided NLQ it gets executed. Things like item color. So for example, if you grew up like me, adding a U to the word color, or if you wanted to sort of generalize your items to call them all stuff, you can add various different synonyms in here to make the search respond quicker to any sort of turn of phrase that you may have, or anything that any of your users might find helpful in quickly establishing value from a platform such as this. And again, in its own sort of long-winded way, this is really an exercise in sort of illustrating that you don't have to do anything outside of plugging in your API key to make this system work, because if you're using Yellowfin already, then you're going to have a view or some sort of mechanism for connecting to data already. Now, in terms of that API key, if you're looking for it, it's in the admin settings. All you'll need to do is scroll down to the external connections, create a new entry, and plug your API key into it. So this gives you the ability essentially to very quickly map your AI platform to Yellowfin so that we can quickly see those results. And those results will look like this. If we create a new natural language query, what we're going to see is an option, first of all, to choose the data set that we want to use, that view that I just sort of talked about and illustrated. The idea is that we can sort of utilize any one of these for any sort of number of different functions and different sort of departmental functions and so on. And again, if anyone's used this in the past, this is what NLQ looks like as it currently sort of stands. This is, if you're using an older version, what you would have presented to you. It gives you the ability to select a number of options here, which sort of prompt you through to essentially building a report just by sort of feeding in some answers to questions here. And it's an extremely helpful and serviceable way to derive data from any of the sort of data sources that you may have access to. But it's always been thought that this was a little bit too sort of self-contained. The idea is, and the thought was, that it was built by developers for BI analysts and so on, which I can sort of understand people saying, but I don't totally agree with. But anyway, what we have the ability to do now is remove any sort of perceived boundaries and give people access to really sort of get up to the elbows in terms of finding the data that they want. Now, before I do actually start typing in here and illustrating that, one subtle thing that you may have noticed here is on the upper right hand side of the screen, it's come up with some suggested questions. Now, this sort of leverages the connection to AI in the background. What it's done is essentially looked at that data model and established the sort of connections and the sort of questions that you may want to ask. So it essentially gives us the ability to choose any one of these pre-built questions and use it as a sort of basis, if you will, a benchmark for analyzing the data further. So we can start to sort of illustrate in that very sort of efficient way, in this case here, sort of sales by month. Now, to sort of illustrate one or two little cool features within this, I'm going to start by asking my own question. So what I can do is say, show me the items sold by state, for instance. So if I type this in here, it's going to pull back all of those items by the various different states. Now you'll notice there's a little edit icon pencil up here as well, which means you can sort of augment any of these questions that you ask. So in this case here, if I wanted to refine this maybe to last month, I can do so. Just hit enter, run the report again, and it'll come back with a sort of revised report just for last month's sales. But I can also do something cool as well here at this point, and that is based on the underlying connections that we have and the data we have within. We can do time comparison. So I can say show the items sold by state for last month versus the same time last year. And what this is going to do is again build that query for me. run it and illustrate the sort of differences and the distinctions between the two different points in time. We've got in the sort of purple color here this sort of sales for last month highlighted in purple, and this gray bar represents the same period 12 months ago. So it's a really cool way to quickly analyze and drill into data. Now we can sort of change the view at this point as well. I can sort of look at this in a different sort of perspective. I can also open this as a report and start to edit it from here as well. I can add it to various different dashboards and stories and presentations. We haven't got time to sort of go into all of those, but they're really cool ways of sort of building on this information and really sort of selling that story, that narrative to different types of audiences. But what I wanted to do next was literally highlight a feature of highlighting features. So what I will do here is show oh, and this helps to sort of illustrate. You can sort of add shorthand in here as well. So if I go to show, for example, the year-to-date revenue, bang, I can run that report and it will come back with a sort of breakdown, a number of that revenue. But what I can then do is, again, by augmenting the report, I can say, maybe by item sold. And also, while I'm at it, highlight any sales greater than 200,000, for example. So what this is going to do now is build this report for me and come back and sort of highlight specific areas that you might be interested in, namely anything over $200,000 in terms of sales in this case. So some really cool options there to sort of highlight some data. Now the last one I'm going to show you, in fact two very quick ones. What I'm going to do here is a different type of sort of visualization that gives you a little bit more flexibility and sort of interaction with the data. So I'm going to say chart the items sold and the profit by date for, let's say, 2023. Okay, bang, run that, comes back nice and quickly there with my two sort of lines that represent the sort of the sales and the profitability. Gives me the ability again to sort of drill down and narrow down into various different composite times. It will also allow you to sort of tack on things like highlighting various different values in here as well. So again, another really useful application of the data within. Now the last one I want to show here sort of circles back to something we talked about in that introduction to the view, and that is the synonyms. So again, it's designed really to help cope with any sort of regional variances and those sorts of things, or any sort of turn of phrase that you want to incorporate. But I can type in here the most profitable stuff this week, and what it's going to do is build a report that goes away and pulls back the item that has sold the most, that's ranked number one for this week. So a number of cool things that you can do there with regards to drilling into, interpreting the data. And as I said, we haven't really got the bandwidth to go into depth right now, but they sort of fold into other different ways of sharing that sort of narrative and sort of illustrating various different talking points as well. So that's really all I wanted to show here. Hopefully that's been in some way helpful and insightful. But what I'm going to do now is pass it on to my colleague Stephen, who's going to talk a little bit more about sort of similar perspectives, but from a sort of integration and sort of development perspective. So, Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So I wanted to come back to something that we showed in one of the webinars last year, when we were talking about embedding Yellowfin into desktop applications or other applications you've got in-house. Obviously, we have a really strong API and the ability to white label Yellowfin and embed it into your applications to look like part of your product. And we had a lot of response from developers loving Yellowfin and being able to embed in the great features and the functionality that Yellowfin provides. And one of the great things here is about getting faster time to market with these features, lower long-term risk and cost for getting rid of the hidden maintenance costs that come with code and managing solutions, making sure you've got that instant competitive advantage, being able to focus on your core product and letting the BI stuff be something that is just a commodity that comes in, but also a commodity that allows you to grow and learn more about your industry and gather all that and bring that back into what you're building and developing and canning those reports to be able to push back out to the rest of your customer base. And also it's about getting instant innovation. So here's the code from the app that we've had a look at before. Here's the app running, and as before, we can get a list of all the reports, select the reports and jump directly into a specific report, interact with them inside our application, bringing all that rich features and functionality of Yellowfin directly in. We can also use the single sign-on to get directly into specific system areas, be it into the browsing or creating reports or the administration areas or timelines or signals. Here, I've gone straight into one of my favorite dashboards. I can kind of click through, see the different dashboard elements that I got favorited. So here's one for gaming, kind of, again, all this stuff straight in, building Yellowfin, bringing all that power directly into the desktop, into your application. But also, all the new natural language query with AI, we have that in here. So again, we can just come in and we can ask a specific question. So, let's enable the AI. So let's chart revenue by month, highlighting values greater than, let's say, 1 million. And let's ask that question. And it's now gone and converted that question into guided NLQ, which brings in all the reach, time period mapping and everything else that guided NLQ is fantastic for, that allowed you that double pass over the data. It does all the really complex stuff, but it's now got the ability to ask pretty much any generic question on top and have the AI map that back down to your models. So, wow. 0 code changes in this Delphi application, and I now have the AI embedded guided NLQ working directly in the app, which is awesome. So now we've seen kind of the power and the reason we love having Yellowfin embedded in, why it's such a hit with ISVs. I'm going to pass back to Chance just to finish us through here today.
Okay, and there we go. So yeah, I thank you very much for those demonstrations, Stephen and Dan. I really hope that it came through loud and clear how strong our commitment in all of this has been to ISVs. I think that is a big part of why we did this. While Stephen was walking through an example that had Yellowfin's logo on it, if you know anything about us, and that the majority of what we do is work with companies to embed Yellowfin in their products. We do obviously a lot of use cases helping companies do internal data products and dashboards and other types of analytics for their internal use cases. But the majority of the people who come to us asking to help them add analytics to their product. There is absolutely no requirement that Yellowfin's branding be on what you've embedded. It's very part and parcel to what we do in our philosophy as a company in helping ISVs and software companies add these analytics features into their products. And of course, as part of that, this AI NLQ release is already helping ISVs who have engaged Yellowfin to do that add AI into their products, just in the way Stephen just showed you. So all of those ways that you can very quickly put in your product some kind of agent AI that allows your customers to go in and ask questions like that without putting them into a complex report development interface. Yellowfin's report development, we like to keep it very simple, but it is also very fully featured and rich, and there's a lot in there. And sometimes when you have audiences that are less data literate, putting a question answer interface in front of them is a much simpler way to go for them and what they need. And this allows those ISVs to put AI in their product pretty much just by flicking the switch, as Stephen was showing you. So you can include it in a very deep and integrated way that will require coding integrations, but as Stephen was showing there, that's not really required. You can put it in also in a way that is just naturally embedded into your product through existing plugin features. And then you have AI in your product, you have a question answer interface for your customers. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear and talk about something, because we're very committed to that modality of deployment of Yellowfin. And then I'll talk a little bit about what is coming up soon before we turn it over to questions. So where we're going with this, in the interest of making sure that these artificial intelligence integrations are pragmatic and really solving problems for our customer base, what we want to do next is to take what we've done with AI NLQ and expand it. We'll be putting, as I said before, more models in, more services that you can connect to, even all the way down to custom LLMs if you want to do something local, all in the future. While this release supports OpenAI today and the 2 models that I mentioned, we will be expanding that quite a bit in pretty short order with future releases. So keep an eye on that if you have, for example, a desire to connect to OpenAI on Azure or one of the other services out there. And please do let us know if there's a specific service you're really interested in you'd like to deploy on. As this continues to grow and we get into our future releases with AI, another piece that is already being baked right now, shall we say, for a future launch is our assisted insights enhanced with AI NLQ. So what that's going to look like is you'll hover over any charter widget and you'll have a tell me more button. And that will use the AI in order to do much as assisted insights does in a very kind of loop through every dimension method today, and uses some kind of statistical techniques to identify what's really driving the variance. In this case, we'll use AI not only to help create a model for what it is that really explains that data, but also generate all that text and narrative around that. And that's really going to be a nice addition for plugging that content immediately from where you are when it pops up into presentations and stories and dashboards with narrative and with the text that the AI generated. And as a human, you can of course review that before you publish it, you can edit it, but that all comes up just as part of that extension of how do you get to what the story your data is trying to tell you faster? How do you get to that why faster? What is causing when things look normal and weird and you want to get into what looks weird and tell me what is making it a very high value, a very low value, and we want that explanation. We're now in a position where, as we come out with these future releases, we can deliver that pretty much automatically. So it's a great storytelling feature. It's a great addition to our existing Yellowfin stories where you can do these more long form analysis and also for other types of content you want to share, along with the narrative of what is actually driving something that happened. And of course, you get all the collaborative features of Yellowfin with the Yellowfin timeline and then putting it in stories like I mentioned. So that is all coming up on a future GA release. For now, I'll go ahead and wrap up what we've done. Thank you very much. We would like to go ahead and take some questions, and it looks like people have already submitted some. So Dan and Stephen, you're welcome to jump in. I'm going to start kind of going through some questions and reading them out loud. You guys just interrupt me if you have something you want to address or something you want to go ahead and answer for us. So first one from Shelley, do you have to use the bring your own AI model? Is this feature not out of the box provided by Yellowfin with a connection to OpenAI? I'll go ahead and take that. So OpenAI does incur usage charges, and what we found was that some other providers that go with that and then include those usage charges have to wind up baking those usage charges into pricing in their product, obviously, because they have to fund that. We wanted to sidestep that because of the wide variety of use cases Yellowfin supports. Some of those are direct internal use cases. Some of those are for ISVs, where they're embedding Yellowfin into their product and have specific pricing set up around that. And we wanted to give them as much freedom as possible for how they want to include that, rather than having a one size fits all for Yellowfin. So the bring your own AI, I think that sometimes it can sound, maybe in the way that we put it there, a little bit daunting. The fact is all we're talking about is for the existing OpenAI you already might use for ChatGPT or whatever. You just have to go turn on the API, and then it'll give you an API key, which is just a long string that you can just copy into Yellowfin, and Yellowfin will use it from there. So you can use it with a pretty simple setup. I recommend checking it out once you download 9.15, and that setup is, I was able to do it in less than a minute. However, it does, be aware that obviously OpenAI or other services like that do incur charges. I've found them to be very small charges, especially if you're just experimenting with it in a sandbox. For my own personal playing around, it was cents. But obviously when you deploy it at scale to many users, that's something to be taken account in your model for pricing. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's see, we use client, from James, we use client orgs in Yellowfin. Is it possible to give the option to our individual customers for them to add in their own OpenAI setup, or is it currently more universal and needing to be applied at the parent level? That's a great question, and it's something we're actually addressing internally right now. So what is released today is that you can publish Yellowfin with this in a multi-tenant setup. Your OpenAI connection happens at the parent level, and you can turn it on or off for your client organizations. We've contemplated something that is when you do release to those customers, because of what I just mentioned about custom pricing models, some ISVs might actually want to tell their customers to bring their own models. And that is actually coming out in the next release. That's already slated for another GA and Yellowfin. So if you want to be able to deploy that, you can download what we have today. You can play around with it, get it all set up. And then when you upgrade to the next release, you should have it available so you could actually set up your ISVs, each tenant in your organization, to bring their own model. So then in each case, every tenant could be operating on a different model and bringing their own to fund it themselves. So I think that allows the maximum flexibility. So you can set it up yourselves. You can set it up so that you are bringing your AI model and publishing that out to your tenants, or in that future release, you can set it up so your tenants are even bringing their own models if you want to do that. Let's see, also from Jake, go ahead.
I was going to say there's also a follow-on question there, just asking around the data that gets transmitted to the AI engines. There's a lot of questions here on AI, which is great, considering the topic here today. So yeah, the question came through was, what is actually being sent through? Is it just field names and the queries that are being transformed? Yeah, well, we're not. The key part of the question really here is, are you sending any of the customer data out? And the answer to that is absolutely not. This is all being used, as Dan showed in the demo, where you're able to set the synonyms for the fields and those types of bits. All that kind of metadata, that understanding is what we'll share with the AI engine to then generate your query into the guided NLQ syntax. And I know, Chance, this is an area that is probably something not to understate, or is actually to really kind of get a grips about, because we're using AI to convert it into our guided NLQ. And I know you're very passionate on this one, Chance, so I'll let you talk about how that's such a different thing and what kind of value that brings back in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really big deal, the way that the engineering team cleverly set this up, because guided NLQ was already a very rich set of features, and being able to do an ad hoc kind of query of Yellowfin and get it got back as a first-class citizen as reports and collaboration go. So what is actually being shared with the AI is the question and the field names, not the data in the table for this AI NLQ feature. What I recommend that usually clarifies it for people when they first start playing around with it, and really can add further insights into exactly how this is working under the hood, is that if you flip on debug level logging in Yellowfin, which we can share a link to a document that tells you how to do that. And then you actually, if you're a little more technically minded and you want to go on the server and take a look at the log files, or have your IT team take a look at those log files and share it with you, you can actually see the specific request that for a question Yellowfin makes of the AI service, and you can see how the AI service responds. So that gives you, I think, full transparency in terms of what's being shared. Don't flip those on in debug necessarily for a production deployment, but just while you're playing around with it, if you want to type some questions in and see what that interaction looks like with the AI, and just confirm for yourself what is being shared and what's not being shared, you're certainly welcome to do that. I like that there's that much transparency in the service usage. But to answer your question more in a simpler way, no, the data from the table is not being shared. It's only the field names, metadata, type field names, data types, and names, and then the question that the user asked. All right. From Angelo, let's see, in the demo of the AI NLQ, you showed by year and week, but what happens when you have multiple dates in your data set? Dan, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have multiple dates in your data set and the view is configured to view them, then you should be fine. I mean, maybe we need to know a little bit more about what you're looking for, but you can certainly say, for example, show me the sales in Minnesota for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That would translate just fine. But yeah, if you've got multiple days that you want to interrogate, then absolutely, yeah, you can do that.
As a follow-on, as a follow-on, there's also a default date setting when you set up this NLQ in your metadata in your view. And if the user asks a question about a date, but then doesn't specify which of the multiple dates that may be available they're looking to get information on, that default date is supplanted as, assuming that's the date we're talking about, because most data sets seem to have a driving, underlying date, and then there are other dates you ask about that are in relation to that date. Like if you're looking at a payment system, the transaction date would be the primary driver, but the settlement date might be an additional date you have in your system. And so you can make that transaction date the default date. So when they ask a question and I want to see them for this year, and they leave out which date they're talking about, it will use the default date in that case. But if they specify the date, then that would allow them to issue a query specific to that, to the date that they specified. All right.
Okay, there's another question on the ChatGPT. Just asking around about languages again. So it says, knowing that ChatGPT, in addition to English, also works in Spanish and Portuguese. I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but they would like to know if the NLQ with AI will also be able to interpret a question in Spanish or Portuguese.
Yes, it is multilingual, and I've actually recently seen it in Japanese. So yeah, it'll be able to do that.
Pretty cool.
Quite simply. Can Yellowfin directly access an Elevate DB? I've got to be honest, I have never used Elevate DB in anger. Generally, Yellowfin will be able to access anything that has a JDBC driver available and can use ANSI SQL. So if it's not a certified database in Yellowfin, it would still be able to use it based on that. And so you'd have to take a look at Elevate DB, since I'm less familiar with that one, and see.
I did do a quick check, and there is a JDBC driver for Elevate, so I would assume it's going to be possible quite easily.
Good question. We'll make a note of that one and do our own homework, because I'll be curious. From Shelley again, when can we expect Gemini to be supported? I don't have a specific date, unfortunately. We are adding over the course of the year additional models, but keep up with our releases. Just kind of look at what is coming, and every release I would expect to see expansions of them over the next year. So hopefully that at some point quickly you'll be able to get Gemini. Also, because you've asked this question about Gemini, we make a note of it, and we do tend to kind of keep up with where the biggest demand is. So so that'll help as well. That feedback always helps us prioritize the models that we're working with. But I certainly expect those to be expanded over the course of this year. So look for it this year, even though I don't have a specific date for you. We are now on 9.14. We're going to 9.15, increase the fee. Generally speaking, if you have a Yellowfin subscription, you should be able to upgrade without paying anything additional. Again, that's a generality. There are some ISVs out there with very specific kind of pricing terms, but generally speaking, that's not a concern. You shouldn't need to pay a fee to upgrade. You should be able to go to the download page that is available for Yellowfin downloads, and as long as you're a valid subscriber, you'd be able to download the upgrader and go to 9.15. Now, of course, if you do set up that OpenAI connection, you have a relationship directly with OpenAI, and your financial relationship is direct to OpenAI too. So if you use that a lot through Yellowfin, you'll incur charges from OpenAI, but not from Yellowfin. Rick says, thanks, you're very welcome. Happy to. How much difference is there between the new AI analyze this over charts, etc., versus the current model we've had for years? What new benefits are there? Thanks. So yeah, so this actually is a piece that's the piece I was showing. It's coming. It's not released yet. So everything I'm saying is a bit speculative because we haven't actually pushed it out in a release yet. But a lot of people are familiar with assisted insights, where you go in and assisted insights. Think about the way it works. Fundamentally, it is taking the data that you want an explanation for, you want to do a comparison for, and it's looking at the dimensions that are included in the summary data that you're comparing, and it loops through those dimensions to try to find the maximum variance between two buckets you're comparing, and from that infers that best explains the data. What we're doing in this case would be more of a combination of that with sending that to the AI and saying, given the different components that we're seeing here and variances, can you help me come up with a more intuitive explanation of what this data is doing? And we're getting some much more rich explanations in that way. We're also getting better text, which is less kind of formulaic, which you've seen in the existing assisted insights. And we're increasing the collaboration of it. So you can actually turn around and take that information in much more kind of streamlined methods and drop them directly into stories and presentations and dashboards. So those are the key benefits we're seeing with it.
So the next question here is asking, and again on the AI side of things, asking about the differences between models for GPT-4 and also GPT-4 Mini, and what's the difference in terms of the effect that they make. I'm not sure. Do you know?
I'll tell you, from my perspective, you're going to get GPT-4o is a bigger model trained on a lot more information, a lot more breadth of information. That may not pay off a ton in terms of the way that you're asking those questions, we've noticed, because you are limited in that AI NLQ to asking questions about your data. So if you go in there and ask in a Yellowfin window for AI NLQ, how tall was Napoleon? It's going to come back and tell you that doesn't really seem to be about your data. Assume your data is not about Napoleon. That doesn't really seem to be about your data. And so, please ask the question that's relevant to the domain of your data. So it will limit your context to asking questions about your data. And because of that, sometimes the widest, most broadly trained model is not necessary. And so we have actually seen similar performance with GPT-4 Mini. Having said that, the reason you might want to test it out and make that compromise and go from 4.0 to 4 Mini is that 4 Mini is also substantially less expensive. So if you're looking to save yourself costs on a large deployment, 4 Mini may very well be the way to go. You just have to use it on your data and make sure you're getting similar results. A lot of times with this AI stuff, things are very experimentally driven, not just in terms of how you're asking questions and what you're getting back, but also in terms of the different models and different responses you're getting. So just, make sure it works, give it the smell test, but you can save some money by going to 4 mini instead of 4.0, which is why we wanted to include that.
So I think there's a follow-on question from
Are
Jason. That's similar to the one that James asked earlier about the ability to have different client orgs using different OpenAI keys. I think the request there is really about wanting to see data consumption across each client org from the requests that are made, and then being able to for them to be able to charge a usage feedback to them. So at the moment we don't log the usage through the app. So that was something that you'd need to have through your provider for your AI side of things. I know with OpenAI, if you've got individual keys, then you can see the usage for each individual key, and you can kind of name them and keep them that way. But at the moment, that's probably a future thing rather than something that we've got there for you right at the moment to be able to manage straight out of the box.
Yeah, I think Stephen nailed it. I would say the exact same thing, that I think that in that next release where we do allow each tenant to go in and set up their own connection, you could, as part of the automation, just set them up with their own key on your existing account. And then you could monitor usage by key. And we are also looking at some ways to report on usage and the different ways you might want to slice that up. So I'm actually going to take your question and talk to the engineering team about it, because I think it's a really good question for us to consider if there's an easy way for us to just turn around and provide that in a near future release, so you can actually see that usage and put that in your billing practices. I think that's a good opportunity. Good idea. I'm stealing it. What is a more appropriate model to use for AI NLQ, if GPT-4o or GPT-4o mini? So I would say experiment with it. I really just think you're going to have to go in and it's very easy to change in that Yellowfin setting. Set it to 4.0, ask a few questions, set it to 4.0 mini and ask a few questions. You'll start to get a sense if there's any real difference at all. If there's not, obviously you want to go with a less expensive one, but you will have to kind of see how it works with your own data and kind of just check out your own experience, especially if you're deploying this as an ISV in front of your customers. You're going to want to own some of that choice and whether or not it creates the right experience for your customers. I will tell you that for my own experience, 4.0 mini, because we are limited to a specific domain, was sufficiently powerful for most of my needs. But your mileage may vary, so it's tough for me to say what the difference is for all data sets and all types of questions that might be asked. Next question, will the NLQ be able to interrogate the quality of your data? Oh, that's a good question. For example, can I ask column A and column B always, if they always correlate, or are there exceptions? The future tell me more about your data comes much closer to that without us having thought of it as a data quality measure, which is a really interesting direction to take it. I like that thinking. Without us having thought of it as a data quality measure, and we thought of it more as a way to get to explanations, it will do that to say that, hey, you have a couple of ways to slice this data up here, which seem highly correlated. But we hadn't considered it as a data quality use case. It'd be interesting to see if we could apply some of those measures to it, because I can see that being a whole other branch of kind of use cases and values out of this. So thanks for considering that. I think if you use it, you might be able to get some benefit out of it in that direction. But like I said, it wasn't actually by design. I really like that idea. Thanks, Stefan, for that. I think that's our last question. Oh, yep, that's our last question. So thanks to everybody for attending. Stephen and Dan, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Not really, just hopefully what we went through made sense, and looks like it can quickly add some assistance to you, and then feel free to get in touch with us and we can explore it further.
Yeah, just we're here to help you on the journey. We want to hear your feedback on the product and on the updates, and getting Dan or one of the other solution architects on a call with you to listen about what you've been doing and what you're trying to do. We're always interested in hearing your stories and how you're doing, because that helps us feed back into the product and make things better for the future. And it probably won't be the first customer to come up with with those kind of same questions or new questions, especially around the new features. So yeah, please reach out to sales or support if you've got any questions, and yeah, enjoy the new features.
All right, yeah, go download them. Thanks everybody for attending. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.